everyone, and welcome back to another episode of EdUp Career School's The Scoop with your host, Kathy Belletti. Today, we're talking about leadership, but in a different way. We talk about leadership all the time in the sense of how amazing it is, how it's definitely a great role to get into, but seldom do we talk about the pitfalls of leadership. And the reason why this is so important is because you have so many people who can't wait for the opportunity to get into a leadership role. And what happens is sometimes we fail at giving everyone the full story of what leadership is really like. And leadership is an amazing thing. It's a responsibility. And everyone is not in a position where they should be in leadership. It's not meant for everyone. But what happens is we have to talk about the amazing stuff when it comes to leadership, but we also have to talk about the other side, because what happens is we have so many people coming into leadership with false perceptions. And now when they get into the role, they're like, wait a minute, hold on for a second. This is not what I thought this was going to be. And then people make up their own rules. And what happens is it becomes a cycle where you have to continuously hire and rehire. And what some leaders don't understand is that the common denominator is you, because you were never really given the full story of what leadership really is. And now you're left to just make it up as you go along. And that leads to really bad choices sometimes. All right. So I want to talk about this because it's very important. And in some cases, some people may be able to listen to this and say, whoa, okay, that is definitely not me. So maybe I should revisit F leadership as something that I actually want to do. All right. So the first thing when we talk about the pitfalls of leadership, responsibility. And I know responsibility may come off as well, duh, if you're going to be in leadership, of course you have to be responsible. But I'm talking about in a different sense, responsibility. When you are called to leadership, you are now responsible for a group of people's feelings, whether it's directly or indirectly. And I know some of you are going, oh my gosh, I don't even have time for this because I'm paying these people to do a job. I don't have time for the drama, right? But you need to. Because if you have an employee who was affected by something that someone else said, had nothing to do with you, right? It's still your duty to make sure that that person on your team is okay. Because when your employees keep all of that in and they start to internalize everything, guess what? It starts to affect their performance, right? And if you really know your team, you'll be able to pick up on if someone walks into your office and says good morning, you could easily go, something is up, right? Or even if you're a remote team and you get on a Zoom call, you can look at someone's face and tell that something is off. You could get on the phone with someone and tell something is off. You can text one of your employees and you can tell that something is off based on their response. It is your responsibility to find out what is going on. It could be something that someone else said to them or the way they were treated by someone else. It could be something personal, but it is your responsibility to find out what's going on. And I think that as leaders, sometimes we don't understand that sometimes our employees are just looking for an outlet to get it off of their chest so that now they can go back to work and be productive. But also as a leader, it is just as important for you to show empathy as for your team members to show empathy to the customers that they serve. This is your team. These are your employees. They are the engine that keeps your companies growing. So you have to make sure that you get across to your employees that you care about their circumstances. And you would be surprised. Just after one conversation, your employee turns to you and say, you know what, thank you so much for noticing. Thank you so much for noticing. I was trying to figure out how I'm going to get through this day, and I realized I just need to talk it out. So thank you for the opportunity. And now all of a sudden, that employee is back to norm, and their productivity is through the roof because they just need to get it off their chest, right? But then you're responsible for their feelings, especially if it was directly impacted because of you. As leaders, you have to be careful with your delivery. And I know sometimes, I've heard so many managers say, I don't have time. I don't have time to sit there and be soft and, choose my language wisely. Why not? Why not? Because it costs you way more money to keep losing gifted people over and over. Watch your delivery. Sometimes as leaders, you forget to put yourself in their shoes because you don't like to be spoken to in a certain way. And too many times have I heard leaders say, oh my gosh, I don't have time for these soft people. What do you mean? As a leader, it is your responsibility to respect the people that are on your team. So sometimes you do have to slow down and choose your words wisely and say, I don't have time, but let me see how I could get this across to this person in the most respectful manner. All right. So when it comes to leadership, hey, you are responsible for their feelings. Sometimes you got to get mushy. Right? Especially since the pandemic, the world is in an uproar, and some people still have not recovered. You don't know what's going on in your staff members' lives, but you have to be able to pay attention because they will appreciate you for it. The second downfall is emotional and mental stamina. And this is not anything, I don't even remember as a leader mentioning this, for years when I'm interviewing employees, asking about emotional and mental stamina. Because really and truly, to be honest, years ago, I thought it might have scared people away because they may be thinking, wait a minute, am I coming into a toxic environment? Right. But as a leader, you have to have emotional and mental stamina. Okay. It's definitely needed. And here's what happens, because as a leader, you feel as if you always have to be the strongest person on a team. Okay. I'm not allowed to feel because I have to make sure that I'm there for my team members. Right? So you have all of this weight on you. And the bottom line is you don't understand that you are a person also who has blood that's running through your veins. And as much as you try to come off as if everything is just bouncing off of me, it's not true. And the thing is, your team members know that it's not true. Because if it is true, that means that you are not human. If you really think about the people in your personal lives, the people that you look at and it's like, oh man, they always seem as if they have it all together. But that's not the truth. Because in this world, nothing is always perfect. Something happens at some point in time, whether it's personal, whether it's professional, it doesn't matter. But as a human being, at some point, it starts to penetrate your mental, it starts to penetrate your soul. And here's what's also important. A lot of times when your employees are looking at a manager who comes off as if nothing ever affects them, they lose respect for you because now you're not being real. Now you're not being authentic. So as a leader, it's not a problem for you to show that you're frustrated. It's not a problem for you to show that, you know what, I'm annoyed and I'm a little worried. Because now your team is going to look at you and they're going to begin to empathize with you. And guess what? Now they're going to start rolling up their sleeves because now they see you as a person. But I know in leadership, it's hard to do that because you want to show as if I'm leading this team. Okay. I'm always going to be the strong one. But guess what? Real leaders sit at round tables. So you have to get that across to your team. So emotional and mental stamina is so important. Leaders, I know some of you who always want to go over and beyond when it comes to your team members. Sometimes it could be very unhealthy because you have to make sure that you fill your cup before you're able to fill someone else's. Okay. And honestly, I was that type of leader where I cared so much for my team. I poured into them. And at night, I'm still trying to figure out, different solutions. But guess what? You're telling your team members, make sure that you take a mental break, but then you're not taking a mental break. And guess what? If you refuse to do that, God is going to find a way for you to take a break. How many of you have been in the hospital sometimes? Or how many of you were forced to be out of work for an entire week because your body just couldn't take it anymore? You have to rest. Sometimes if you're trying to figure out a solution to something and you realize that it's not happening, that means it's time for you to take a step back. Go do something that you like doing. Talk to your friends and family. Okay, go for a walk. You need to pull yourself away, even if it's for 15 minutes, so that you can regroup. And now you become creative again. Now you're able to pour into other people. Sometimes as leaders, you have to shut down. But I know it's a contradiction because some people think that leadership is you always have to be on. You have to be turned on at all points in time because you have people that are watching you. There's people that are watching them too. And I tell you one thing, there's a lot of owners out there that when in fact it's time for them to be turned off, they're gone and you can't get in contact with them at all. So as leaders, you have to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. Because the bottom line is, if you're not around, who's going to take care of your team anyway? Right? So you have to make sure that you are taking care of your mental. And guess what? I know how it is. I definitely know how it is because when I'm training advisors, I pour into them. When I'm training directors, I pour into them. And the reason why is because I've sat in their seat, so I understand their struggle and their challenges, and I know how frustrating it could be. And sometimes it's hard to pull yourself away because you know how they feel and you don't want them to feel that way. And that's a great thing about being a leader, but at the same time, it can take a hit on your mental and physical if you keep going and you don't give yourself time to rest and regroup. All right. So make sure that you take care of yourselves because your teams, they need you. All right. The third point is accountability. Remember, when you're a leader, you are accountable for your team members' actions, outcomes, choices. It's always you. And it's not as easy to just say, well, you know what? Well, I've been trying to do this with this person. I've been trying to train them and they're just not getting it. It's still your fault. It's still your fault. It's your responsibility. If you have someone on your team who has been struggling for the longest time, you have to take some steps back and say, okay, wait a minute, what's going on? Have I spent enough time with this person? Am I actually training in the right areas? Am I paying enough attention to this person? Or is this person no longer a good fit? Regardless of how you look at it, you are accountable for this person's actions. You are accountable for toxic people that are on your team because if they're toxic and you realize that they're affecting the entire team, it is your responsibility to cut the cord, let them go. Too many times, especially in sales and admissions, I've heard too many leaders keeping toxic people on their team because they're high performers. Honestly, I don't see that as a high performer. Because when it comes to business, it's not all about numbers. In the back, yes, because this business needs to survive. But guess what? One person bringing in numbers, that's not accounting for an entire team of folks who can do the same thing, but they refuse because you have this toxic person here who you think is worth your entire establishment. So you are still accountable for that toxic person. If you have a low performer on your team, look, if you've done everything that you could with this person and they're still not getting it, if you've reached out to other people to see if you can get a fresh perspective on this person and they're still not getting it, if you've tried them in different departments in your establishment and they're still not getting it, it is time to cut. And it is the hardest thing to do as a leader. It is not easy to tell someone that you have to cut off their financial resources. It's not easy. I've had to do it too many times than I would like to admit, but it was the best decision. And sometimes it was a decision that came that was totally over my head. It's one thing to have to walk advisors out the building due to compliance and them getting shopped. And I remember the first person, unfortunately, who I had to cut was my very first role as a DOA, and it was my very first week. I was away in training and got a call from my hotel saying, by the way, welcome to the campus once again, but when you get back, you need to walk this person out of the building because they just got shopped for a third time. And I'm like, dang, I didn't even get to set my office up yet. I started 1 week. I'm in training in a totally different state the next week. And guess what? Soon as I come back, I have to end someone's job. Okay, because they did the wrong thing, but it's a hard decision and there's nothing that you can do. And when you think about the other side, when it's involuntary, I remember being in a school where all of the campuses shut down and it was CEC. And that was one of the hardest decisions ever, because when that call came that the campus had to shut down, I had to call all of my advisors into an office with the campus president, break the news to them, and let them know, as of right now, you guys are no longer employed. And I had to stand at the exit as I watched my entire team pack boxes and walk to their cars. And all of this happened within 30 minutes. Okay. So when it comes to leadership, it's not easy. It's not easy. I mean, it is definitely a blessing to lead a team of people, to help people get to the next level in their careers, to see someone who thought that it was the end and they have no idea which direction to go. And then fast forward to weeks or months later, and you're seeing this person like really doing it. And that type of stuff really sets my heart on fire, because when you are in leadership, you are a servant. You are not on the team to guide and to manage and to tell people what to do and to boss them around. You're on a team as a leader because you are there to serve your team. Okay, but these things are not easy as a leader. All right, but there's always a way, because all of these things can be fixed. When it comes to responsibility, just be aware of how you communicate with the people on your team, and be aware of the people and how they're acting. If you're a great leader, you know every single person on your team. And even up until like a couple months ago, there was a group of advisors who I was training, and I always develop close relationships with my advisor. And it comes to the point where someone goes, "Hey, Kat," and I'm like, "Nope, jump on a call, because that's not how you say hi." And it's not that it's a wrong way, but is when you know people that are on your team, you start to know their habits, and you begin to realize when things are off, right? So all of it has to do with paying attention. If it's directly from you, you just have to know that if you have to have a really tough conversation with someone, take a step back, all right, and really think of how you're going to deliver this. I always use the build, break, build method. Okay, if you have to have a tough conversation with an advisor, use that method. What you do is you build them up first. You talk about something great that they've been doing. You talk about their amazing attributes, their strength, something. Find something to start the conversation off with, and then you break them. This is where you talk about opportunities. In these areas, this is what I've noticed. But the last thing you have to do is build them again. Because remember, when your employees leave you, they only remember the last thing that you said. And if the last thing that you said is negative, they're going to ride with that. So everything else that you said that was positive went like this, boop, boop. All right. So use the build, break, build method. When it comes to emotional and mental stamina, if in fact you feel as if you are not in the mental space, let your team know, I just need 15 minutes. Okay. Because what happens is, if you don't do that, now you are going to start to treat your team based on how you woke up for the morning. And that is the most toxic leader ever. You should never manage a team based on how you're feeling for the day. That's not fair to them. Okay. So if you feel as if you're hitting that wall, take a step back. It's okay with letting them know, I really want to be here for you right now, but I just have a few more things that I have to do. Can you give me a half an hour? They'll respect you for that. And in that half an hour, make sure that you do whatever you need to do to fill your cup again, so that you can be there for your team. Okay. And when it comes to accountability, come on, these things can be fixed too. Pay attention to the people that are on your team. If you see that someone is falling behind, if you see that you have some incompliant folks on your team, if you see that you have some toxic people, it is up to you to make the move and do the right thing for the other folks on the team who really want to win. Okay, leadership is an amazing thing, but with everything that's awesome, there's always some downsides. But the great thing about it is these downsides, they can be fixed. Okay, if you really want leadership bad enough. I really hope that you guys walked away with some amazing tips today. These tips have helped me. I've been in leadership for a very long time, and I failed a lot of times. But most importantly, I was able to learn from those mistakes. And this is why I dedicate my career to making sure that I am pouring into my leaders out there. Until next time, bye, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed that episode. I have been working diligently to bring awareness to career schools. There's so much that they have to offer our students and our community. Every single role within the admissions process is critical, whether you're a part of the admissions team, financial aid, career services, academics, everyone deserves a voice. Admissions is the first point of contact for your school, so you want to ensure that you have a team who exudes confidence, passion, and a clear understanding of effective communication with our potential students. I totally understand the pain of missed class starts, low appointment and enrollment conversions, and this is why I created Next Level Admissions Training by Motivate with K.A.T. This platform is a step-by-step process, and it is going to train your new and tenured advisors in every single step of the enrollment process to ensure that our students are inspired and they're ready and prepared to start class. Admissions is not easy. It can be very challenging, but it's definitely worth it. So if you're ready to take your school to the next level, head on over to lessons.motivatewithkat.com and check out Next Level Admissions.